Hey, and welcome guys to another video. Today we're going to be finishing up my unplanned series of Mon Calamari ship builds. Just kind of got on track, and once I did one, led to another, led to this one. I think this will be the final one. And then one that I was kind of hoping to work up to and use the lessons I learned off all the other ones to kind of finish up on this one. This is obviously an MC80 Home 1, Admiral Akbar's ship, the flagship of the rebellion. Now, this model was found on Thingiverse. I was actually kind of looking different places, and I actually found this was a pretty decent model. As you can see, it actually has some panel lines and things of that nature going on, so it has quite a bit of detail going on with it. Now, this was not split up. It was actually one model. I believe I've increased its size 400%, so it's 4 times larger than, let's see if I can get it all matched here, than what the original file is. Now, assembled, I think I have it going backwards. All right. So assembled, it's going to be approximately 22 inches long when we get all these pieces together. Now, use the lessons I learned in the other ones. I printed it out with PLA on my Bambu A1 printer. As if you watched my last video with the MC80 Liberty class, I used that to light it by illuminating the inside. I did print this. As you can see, I printed it hollow. I did do a 3-layer thickness on the outer shell. Unfortunately, I think I did run some supports on it, but it didn't require many on, I think, some of the kind of bridge sections. Oops, needed a little bit of support, and I did tree supports on those. And so, as you can see, I've already kind of started opening up the different sections. It does print with kind of a cover, which I wanted some lip here because these surfaces are going to have to glue together, so you need a little bit of space here to glue it on. I didn't want to kind of trim around too thin, and but it is pretty strong. Like I said, it's PLA, which is a strong plastic, and it's 3 layers thick. Now the engine section also was able to print out without support in it. It did put in some I guess required supports. There was like these stringy lines that I kind of cut through, I guess, for some of the parts here. And I've already started working on this. I've cut away the opening here, and if you look here, you can tell where I've started opening up the engine nozzles of the mini engine. So you have kind of looks like you have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 engines, and so dressed in those different ways. You have kind of these 4 main ones that seem a little bit bigger. Those are pretty easy to get to. As you can tell, I kind of opened those up, and I was able to get a 3mm light in there. Now, like my last project, I did use this is a 5mm brass tube that I would heat up, and I would use that to kind of open up some of the area inside. You gotta be careful not to melt through the outside, but on problem areas, that's where I'd use that to kind of open all that up. And I did run into some decision making on the side engines here. As you can see, these right here, they kind of print out solid. And I first kind of drilled out the ones on this side and just kind of figure out how I was going to do that and make it look good. So what I've actually decided to do, if you can tell already, I've actually cut away the kind of nozzle part from those two, and I'm going to do the same to these. That's kind of a before and after picture. Again, I used a drill bit to drill through, 3mm drill bit to drill through. I used this brass rod again to kind of make sure that it was opening up. And what I've done is I had some of this, I believe this is copper tubing I had that was pretty close to the same size. So I cut those out in sections. They're actually a little bit smaller, but you won't be able to know the difference. So I'll be able to mount my LEDs in there, and then I will put these copper tubing over it. I still have to kind of level them out so they sit correctly. But that's my plan for those, and that way the LED will kind of sit back in there, and you'll have kind of the engine shroud going over it, and I think that'll have a nice look to it. And I'm probably going to do the same to the two bottom ones. These were the only ones that had kind of this grate formation, this T formation grid in there, and that's going to be a problem to kind of drill those out and still look good. So they're actually separate, so I think I'll be able to cut kind of right in here, and I'll cut some more tubing and put those on, and I think that's how I'm going to address the lighting. The rest of it's going to be illuminated with the LED tape. I've already went ahead and started wiring up, so I'm cutting out sections of it. Smaller section for like this one will be used up front here. I believe that's the bottom, and or maybe that's the top. Either way, it's going to be kind of glued in here, and then that should give plenty of light. These are ultra bright 5mm LEDs tape. This wiring, if you're wondering, is telephone wire. I was given a huge roll of it for free, and there's no reason not to use it. It works very good. It's actually a single piece of copper wire, I believe, so it's very rigid. It's actually good for bending around things, and it actually solders really easily. I've had an easier time soldering this wire than I have normal and kind of hobby wire that you get. So I did several strips. The biggest section will be the main part of the body, and I have this will be a 9-part. I'll illuminate it, and if I need more, I might put a second strip in this one, but from the experience of my other one, I think this is going to be emitting. It'll be running at 12 volts, so this will be quite a bit of light illuminating inside there, and being that it's white, it's going to illuminate that entire body. Of course, we'll light block it from the outside and do all that. One thing I am considering right now is trying to light at least this main bridge section, and so I can see where there's a bit of a opening in there. I think I could probably cut this off and run an SMD up in there, and then illuminate the kind of front section. Then I'll be able to drill out the windows and have some windows, and at least that section. There's some smaller ones like this I don't think I'll be able to do that with, but for at least one, I think it would be nice to have a few lights in there. So that is where I'm at the moment. I still have some opening up to do. I'm going to first kind of drill out and get all my engines in place and get the nozzles on. I'll probably, once I get all the nozzles on, I'll probably go ahead and do a pre-shade black, kind of like I did last time. I'll prime it, but then do a pre-shade black to where I don't have to worry about getting the LEDs painted. When I go to do the base color, I'll just be masking over those sections. So that's the plan, and I'll come back once we get further on, and hopefully this will work out. All right, well, here's my progress on my Home 1 Mon Calamari Star Cruiser. This is the drive section. Of course, as you've seen previously, I had the ship split up into 4 sections. I now have all the engine lights on. I've replaced some of the engine nozzles with this copper tubing. And actually, one of the ways I kind of got it in there is cut away the old nozzles, cut my copper tubing, and took a pair of pliers to hold it and heated it up with a little torch, and then kind of pressed it so it kind of melt in there. I went back and glued it in there to make sure it wasn't going anywhere, but I wanted to kind of push it in there to give it a little bit more stability and not just kind of glued to the tip. Of course, I had drilled out all the areas. I now have all my lighting in there. It's 3mm. I believe I have some flickering ones. I forgot which ones are flickering. Some of them are constant on, some are flickering, so it'd be a little bit different, but now I forgot which ones were which because they all look the same. But they are simply kind of dropped in there, and the black glue is this hot glue. And those are all nice and stable. It was a bit fiddly getting these back in on this end, and it was on these, there was really no way, I don't know if you can tell, but the way that was situated inside, there was really no way to kind of get those in there. So I ended up kind of drilling the hole big enough to allow the whole LED with the wiring to drop in. I actually came in from the end of the nozzle and pulled it through. And then as I got to just the last little part, I put a little bit of hot glue in there, pushed it in there, and did my best to kind of center the light. That way it would be kind of in the middle of the nozzle and push back in there. You can see where I've started condensing the wires down. They'll have to be condensed down even further. I do have a strip light going on in there, some ultra bright 5mm strip lights going on in there that will illuminate for any window lighting I want to do. And so that part's ready to go. We have the front part. It has a single strip of 3 illuminating that. I have my front midsection. It has a strip of 6 in there, all glued down. And then kind of the middle of the ship, the biggest part of the ship, it has a strip of 9 SMD, and these are all, again, ultra bright SMD lights, very bright. There's plenty of light going on there. Should be able to open up those windows. As you can see, I've also attached my support rod holding the ship up, aluminum rod in here. I designed and printed some little kind of nuts to sandwich my rod inside the ship. And at first I just kind of super glued it in place to where I felt it was level and correct. It's close to the middle of the ship is where it will be. I needed it to be in kind of a beefy part of the ship. And then I put some 2-part epoxy, you might see the yellowish kind of color to really kind of hold that down. I feel like it's very strong. I feel like the plastic would break. It's very light, so I'm not worried about the heft of it. Kind of centered, so I think we'll be just fine. So from here, I can go on to start connecting the different parts. I just have to connect the wires, draw 1 wire down the support rod, and I can start gluing the parts together. This will be my display base, just a little wood frame. Get these off Amazon. Sometimes you can find them at craft stores and whatnot. They're what my other ships are mounted on. I will design in 3D print some kind of thing to go on here to support our ship further, maybe say Star Wars or something to that effect on it like I did the others. So I'll get these glued together and we'll come back once that's done. All right, I have my ship all glued together now, and I just used a mixture of just the super glues, this extreme power. I got some medium and thin. Thin comes in really handy when you have a really tight space and you try and get some glue in there. I have these little plastic tips I got off Amazon that you can put on these glue bottles, and you don't have to like put a cap on it. It'll kind of hold it in there, and when it does get clogged, you can kind of just cut off the piece that's clogged, and then eventually you can replace it. But very useful, keeps the tips of the glue bottles from getting all glued up. I'm sure if you've ever mixed with super glue, you've had that issue before. So anyway, just doing that process, you can see where I've glued. You can still see the seam lines. I did a little bit of sanding, but there's some more to do. I'll have to use some filler to kind of get that. Somehow I'm not worried about getting it totally gone because it kind of almost looks like a natural panel line for the ship, but you can see a little bit. So it'll be a little bit of sanding and filling going on in there. And just want to kind of show you the lighting, how it's looking on here. So I'm going to dim this down a little bit to make this come out better. And I have a little control here for my volts that I put in, and we'll step it up to, there's 12 volts. So you can see how the ship's lighting there. So we'll have to light block the whole ship. But first, the next step will be priming and sanding to get the better finish. Once I get done with all the priming, I'll put a black light blocking coat over it, and then we can move into our primary coats on there. But I just want to show you how that looks when it's all lit up. That's at 12 volts right now with all those strip lighting going on in there. And it's also lighting all of our engines, as you can see here. I think I said that I thought some were flickering, and these are not all constant on lights, which is fine. until they're plenty bright there. So I think it's heading in the right direction, and we'll be able to open up some windows, and once we get down all our coats of paint, they should look nice and bright. So anyway, we'll just move on to the priming and sanding now. All right, forget the background noise. My 3D printer is going right now. I got my primer coat on my ship here, looking pretty good. A few little places still need a little bit of touch up. It's going to be some blemishes on it. I think I can mostly conceal those when I go to do the paint and weathering, so I'm not going to worry too much about that. Mostly this kind of seam right here is a little bit more noticeable, but I'll probably just make that like a natural panel line and do some weathering on that, so it should camouflage that pretty well. Though I did want to show you kind of, this is just the first primer coat. This was a filler primer. Let me see, this is from this Iron Armor filler primer. I get this at Harbor Freight. I actually think they're discontinuing this. I may have the last few cans that's available. However, so I put that on there. I wanted to show you kind of the light will still leak through even though we got a pretty thick primer coat. I'm going to cut this light off here, and we're going to turn on our power source, and we're going to take it up to 12 volts. There we go, 11.9. So as you can see, the light is still coming through pretty brightly on our model. That's why we have to proceed with a black light blocking coat that I'll just spray paint on top of that to kind of get rid of that. Pretty noticeable. I do have the engines masked off. A little bit of this Mr. Masking Salt from Mr. Hobby. It's really thick. I don't know if I like it the best, but that's what I have covering the engine nozzles right now. And even with that masking stuff, you can kind of see the engines illuminating through there. So I'm going to proceed with my black light blocking coat. I'll come back and test it, and we'll get it to where we don't have any light shining through. All right, I have my base coat on, and I'm going to explain the steps that I took once I had it all primed up. Now, I went ahead and applied some light blocking coats with this flat black quick color from Home Depot. I don't think they have it packaged in this can anymore. I think it's a different can, but it's just fairly inexpensive. It used to be like 99 cents, but I think it's like $3 now. This does a good job. It lays on good. It's cheap for doing light blocking, stuff like that. It's better than using your good paints. So anyway, it took 2 coats to kind of get it mostly blocked. There was a few little minor areas, but I knew more paint was going on, so 2 coats of that. And then I went in to kind of get the black toned down, again, without wasting a lot of paint. Once you paint something black, I was bringing it back to a light gray. So I had this matte glacier gray from Krylon, sprayed it on. It says matte, but it actually came out really glossy. I did that to kind of cover up all the black and get me back into the cooler shades of gray that I wanted. But it was still a bit warm. I was going for a much cooler gray. And from there, I took some of this Focar. This is Gray Frost. It's a matte finish. I thinned it down and airbrushed it on. And if you can tell, I try to leave some of the panel lines kind of the glacier gray color. So we have some breakup in the panels. Kind of hard to see on the camera. You may tell a little bit. But I didn't just do a full coverage coat. I wanted to leave some panel line color to kind of start breaking up our ship into some different colors. The home one has a lot of different colors going on. So that was just kind of the beginning. So once I got that on, to protect my acrylic craft paint, I put on a clear acrylic matte finish to kind of protect everything. So that's where we're at right now. I got all that paints on. There's a lot of paints. Got that on. Everything's looking pretty good. I do see a little bit of cracking right here. I may have to, in the paint. I don't think it's the model, it's the paint. Probably from so much paint, probably didn't let enough drying time with that clear coat. So, but from here, I'm going to go into my pastel weathering powders, and I'm going to start masking off some of these panels and just to start breaking up all of this and give it its weathering. So that'll be the next step of it. I've showed that before in my other videos. I'll just take masking tape and weathering powders and just break up the panel lines. And but I may show you a little bit of that before we move on to actually opening up the windows. So that's where I'm at. It's looking pretty good, and we'll just keep going forward. All right, well, here is the finished Star Wars Mon Calamari MC80, the Home 1 Admiral Power's flagship. Overall, really happy with how it came out. I did some, for all the paneling, colors, and different things, I did my dry pastels, basically just taking masking tape, putting it on here, taking a brush and powdering on, kind of painting on the powders to darken each panel. I use different colors and different types of blacks, dark grays, mixed in a little bit of some rust colors, yellows, and even just a tiny bit of some bluish color, just to kind of really break up some panels here and there. And overall, I think it looks pretty cool. I'm pretty happy with it. It's not quite the tone I was going for. The paint I used, the acrylic craft paint, I forget the name of it, but it came out really white, and I was actually going more for a cool gray. So when I did paint over it and did all my masking, I clear coated, or did all my dry pastels, I clear coated it, and it was quite bright because of the paint really was kind of a whitish color. So I thinned down some black Vallejo paint, matte black, probably 50-50 with some thinner, and did a very light coat over the entire ship to kind of bring together all the colors and tone down the brightness of that white paint. And I think that helped quite a bit. It really makes the ship look kind of dingy and beat up. And you may notice here there's some battle damage. I did have a flaw. Some of the paint kind of chipped away right here. And instead of fixing that, I just kind of went with it and made it a battle damaged area to kind of hide that. It was just a small flaw, but I think it gives the ship character. I took some brass photo etch metal I had left over and cut out a few squares and glued it on there like it's been temporarily repaired. And then, of course, I took some black pastels and darkened in like it had been hit at a few places. I added on a couple others of just some of the dry pastels to make it look like it's been in battle and it's been hit a few times. So let me get this back into focus for you. But I'm very happy with all that. Again, there was a clear coat once I did all the mask. I did a little bit of dry brushing on the engine nozzles back here just to bring out some of the detail in those engine nozzles. And then from there, it was just a matter of adding in all the windows. And that was done just with a this vise here and the very small drill bit on there, and just trying to. The hardest thing I found on these Mon Calamari, because they're round, it's hard to get the windows. They don't always go straight across. There's often curves because of the different bumps and stuff. So some of my holes doesn't look quite exactly the way I'd want them. But overall, I think it came out pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and plug it in, and I'm going to change the lighting to bring out so you'll be able to see the window lights and engine lights better. So it's going to be powered by a 12-volt LED light strip power supply. And I'll darken it down even further to show you the windows. But first I'm going to show you the engine lighting, and very bright. Very happy with how all that came out. Let's see if I can get that in the focus for you. And they're all firing nice and brightly. Representing a nice looking engine here. I'm going to go ahead and cut this light in there. You can kind of see all the mini windows. Quite a few I drilled in to give it scale, and they go the length of the ship. Thanks to our LED strip. And there's basically, even though it's broken up in sections, there's basically just one light strip on the bottom of the inside of the ship that runs the length of the ship. Broke it up according to sections of the ship. Obviously, try to find some natural lines of the ship to follow in. Was able to get a few kind of in the neck of the main bridge. It was a little too, not enough light being transferred over, but for the most part, it was being very well lit. It's actually in person stands out quite a bit brighter. Let's see if I can bring this down a little bit. There we go. So you can kind of really see the window lighting mixed in. Now I did drill out by the landing bay, as you can see here, some red lights. And I just used a larger drill bit to drill in a little bit. And then I took some red transparent paint and filled it in to give us a little bit of kind of lighting around the landing bay. And I did that. On the opposite side, there's dual landing bays. And I did the same with that. And you can see the lighting on the other side along with the engine lighting. So overall, I think turned out really cool. Again, the shade wasn't quite what I was going for. I was actually going for more of a cool gray, but I'm very happy nonetheless with how it's looking, the weathering, the panels. I think it gives a sense of scale, makes it look like a very large ship with all those windows lighting up and the multiple panels that we're given detail to. And I actually do like the battle damage, even though that was a happy accident. I think that gives the ship a lot of character. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the video and the build. And until next time, everybody have a good one.